Everyone, Joe Axman here, the mediocre astrologer. Meh, he's okay. Guys, this morning I want to look at the astrology of poets. Alrighty. Guys, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, share, book a reading with me, macroastrology.com, macrogoldmachine at yahoo.com. That's my email. Let us begin. All right, this was a request. Somebody requested the astrology of poets. All right, so got a lot to go through. 21 charts. I'm gonna do try and do this timestamps again. Not try, I will. Maya Angelou, I did her in the other one, but you know what? It's good to look at certain charts again and again and again, just so we can really penetrate and deepen our understanding of them. But in any case, try and get through this as efficiently as possible. All right, so Leo rising with Neptune on the ascendant, so very that's great for creativity right away. And then we have this very active Aries house. It is 8th house, but moving to the 9th, right? Jupiter's pretty close to the 9th cusp. Sun is exalted. Uranus. Let me change that. I was just messing around with that. I don't want Eris here. I want let me take Chiron. Hold on. Sorry about that. Chiron. Just for fun, I'm gonna include Sedna and Black Moon Lilith. All right. So Sedna is right here. Sedna is really far out there, so I consider it like somewhat of a spiritual indicator because it's actually further out than Pluto. Yeah. All right. So this late 8th house, early 9th house, right? And guys, it's not black and white that the houses, there is gradation, so you have to think in terms of shades, like I always said. Anyway. All right. Ascendant Lord Venus, exalted in Pisces conjunct Mercury. This is often, we see this often with artists, right? All kinds of artists, music, visual, writing, poetry. So, that's very prominent, especially when Venus is exalted and Mercury is conjuncted. Very common for different types of artists. Not very common, but definitely we see it. I could think right off the bat, Bach and Ravi Shankar, the famous sitar player, right? And we see that Venus is the MC Lord, and it's aspecting by sextile, right? 8th house has to do with her early life and also the power and grit. And these are conjunct the 8th house cusp, right? And she is very powerful, and she had a very difficult upbringing early on. She does have a full moon, so it's big and bright, and full moon. It's really interesting. There's a lot of stuff you hear online because, like, somebody was asking about full moon, and they're like, "Oh, that's terrible. The parents are fighting, and the person is at odds with themselves." I'm like, "Full moons are great. What are you talking about? Have you ever looked at a successful person's chart? So many, like, a lot of famous people have full moons." And people with full moons do better in life. They're very relationship oriented. They're big, they're bright, they're bold. They can see, very broad spectrum. The full moon represents, like, what's the full moon? Like, when the full moon is, we're not like, yeah, like the crazies come out, but it's a great time for like aliveness, worldliness, partying, socializing, relationships. It's the culmination of the moon. It represents the fruiting, the ripe fruit of the moon. So it's like harvest time. So karma is ripe when the moon is full. So you can do a lot with a full moon. Okay. Yeah, North Node in Gemini. Lilith and Scorpio. She had a very sexual past. I think even like prostitution, stuff like that. But yeah, briefly, I mean, let's see here. Sun is square Pluto, and that also accounts for a lot of difficulty, especially early on. But it also accounts for like a certain kind of like power and depth that will take a lot of effort and work to get to, and that's also, you know, lightly square her moon. So it definitely indicates a lot of abuse and hardship early on. But you know, if she can overcome those squares, which she obviously did, a lot of power can come from Pluto, right? Yeah, and then Uranus is very brilliant, original, unique. Saturn's retro, Neptune's retro. Let's see. Yeah, everything else is just pretty normal. Saturn retro, really represents the sort of resistance to authority or going against authority. Generally, these people can be lawbreakers, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all, because the law is often corrupt. I mean, just going along with everything, the status quo is not something that I really think is very evolved way of being. Anyway, that's my Angelou. Let's keep moving. At the end, I might do a little comparison. I'm going to pause it and pull up all the charts, and then we'll do a little bit of comparison. All right, William Blake. So he's an English poet, visionary, painter, and printmaker, largely unrecognized during his lifetime. Blake's work is today considered seminal and significant in the history of both poetry and the visual arts. He was voted 38th in a poll of the 100 greatest Britons organized by the BBC in 2002. A study of Blake's entire poetic corpus, his prophetic poems from what is in proportion to its merit the least read body of poetry in the English language. Others have praised Blake's visual artistry. At least one modern critic proclaiming Blake far and away the greatest artist Britain has ever produced. So he was a visual and a poet, visual artist and poet. Okay. Anaretic degree of Cancer ascendant with moon in Cancer in the 12th house, very creative, right? Because it's pulling in from our subconscious, right? And that's where we get our dreams, when the subconscious, hacks our mind and takes over our system. Our programming, our conditioning, our karma, it's all held in the subconscious. So excellent for creativity. North Node in the first. Leo's taking up most of the first. So we can look to the moon, also the sun for the ascendant. Like, don't be so rigid that you're like, oh, ascendant's at the 29, 35 degree. That's only moon. Now, look how much of the first house is taken up by Leo. Leo, the sun, is also definitely part of his ascendant. So this is like a divided, split ascendant lord, right? And what's interesting is that he was a visual artist and a poet. So anyway. North Node in Leo, Neptune in Leo, Mars. I'm leaving Black Moon Lilith in here mostly as observational. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just observing. I'm very skeptical, and I only talk about things that I know that make sense to me. Black Moon Lilith, I'm still under observation. I think mostly it doesn't do anything. People love to fill up their charts with asteroids and Black Moon Lilith and all the vortex and stuff like that. And most of the stuff doesn't do anything. It's really like you're talking about an ocean and drops, right? And they're paying so much attention to the drops. They're like, what does this asteroid do? And like, you don't even understand your sun or your moon or your Saturn or Jupiter. Fuck all the extra asteroids and Lilith, but people think it's all about the little details, the drops in the ocean, and they're just like completely oblivious to the ocean itself. It's ridiculous. I'm like every time a noob posts a chart, it's like filled with every single asteroid you could, and you can't even read it because it's so full of aspect lines. It's like, dummy, just get rid of everything except the planets and the nodes, maybe Chiron, right? But anyway, Lilith, I'm not like, oh, Lilith, let's pay attention to Lilith. No, I'm just observing it, right? Lilith can fuck off for all I give a shit. All right. William Blake. Okay. A lot of Leo. Leo's very creative. Neptune, North Node, very creative. Moon, Cancer. All right. 5th house. Mercury in Scorpio, Jupiter in domicile 0 degrees. That's always powerful, right? For better or worse, when a planet is at 0 degrees, it's full of vitality. It's the first day of class, super excited. Like Jupiter just went into Sag class, just went into domicile, right? Well, he's a Sag master, but it's the first time. It's his first day of the teacher, right? Jupiter's the teacher, so he's like first day of class. He's the teacher. He's at home. He's the Sagittarian teacher, domicile, but still the first day, so he's very excited, right? Suns and Sag, Pluto, and part of fortune. Part of fortune, I think it is relevant, but I'm also still under observation with part of fortune. It seems to make sense a lot in my chart, but anyway. See what else we got going on here. Mars ruling the MC, and it's in the first house in Leo, so very creative. Conjunct Neptune, very creative. Oh, look at this. Uranus is stationary. That's brilliant, right? I would say not quite as powerful as Mercury, Venus, Mars, any of the inner planets, because the outer planets are normally slow. They're powerful anyway. It's just even more powerful, right? And your slowest planet is definitely your most powerful planet, right? Because Pluto, we often say Pluto is the most powerful, but if Uranus is slower than Pluto, Uranus is more powerful than Pluto, right? If Mercury is slower than Pluto, Mercury is more powerful. And Mercury, there's two ways to look at it. You can look at the absolute slowest planet or the percentage slowest planet, the planet that's closest to being stationed, right? Which in this case is Uranus in both. So Uranus is his most powerful planet here. So very awake and aware. Pisces, highly creative. 9th house, very high level, very sophisticated thinking. There's an inconjunct to Mars, especially. Remember, I'm kind of ignoring Lilith here, so I'm talking about Mars. Mars is important. Lilith isn't. Like just so we're clear. Just because like Lilith has a symbol the same size as Mars does not mean Lilith is equal to Mars or Neptune. It's not. It's really a drop in the ocean. So just get that clear. Just because I have it here doesn't mean it's on the same level. I'm not the kind of person who's like equality for all the sigils, glyphs rather. I don't give a shit. Like fuck off, Lilith. But again, just clarifying my disdain and contempt for things like Lilith, because they're just not in the same league, right? We have these massive giant planets, and Lilith is just a point. It's a mathematical point, and it's not even that powerful. Like the nodes of the moon are very powerful points. Lilith isn't. All Lilith represents is if it's close to the moon, that means the moon's far. If it's opposite the moon, that means the moon's close. So, and we attach mythology to it, but it's really very light. All right. Uranus is square Pluto, which is very interesting. I mean, that's generational, but it definitely will agitate both. And neither of these are personal, so it's kind of interesting how that would manifest. I'm not really sure exactly. But it's definitely going to agitate this Uranus, make it more explosive, and we'd probably be able to pull out some, like if we did a deep dive, looked at his life, looked at his poetry, looked at his art, we'd be able to see something more tangible. But Pluto is very desirous, right? Uranus is very explosive, so we could see like something like squares to Pluto can really increase the tension and the obsession, the drive, the motivation. Squares to Uranus can increase rebelliousness and irritability, the nerves, things like that. Alertness, quickness, speed. And again, I don't really know how it's manifesting for William Blake. Main thing is here, the first house, the moon, and this 5th house stellium, right? It's moving to the 6th house. Pluto is more in the 6th, and it's the 6th whole sign house. Well, I mean, it's really late degree, but in any case, Mercury, Jupiter, Sun in the fifth, very strong for creativity, entertainment, all arts, right? Um, for writing, there definitely needs to be something that's a little more, if you take like something like Jackson Pollock. Jackson Pollock is an artist, right? But he doesn't need any sort of I don't even know Jackson Pollock's chart, so let's not talk about Jackson. But just like somebody who's like a very abstract, very loose, very ethereal, Neptunian, they don't need something earthy in order to make it grounded. But writing, even poetry, needs something earthy. Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, right? Aquarius, Saturn, that could also be something. It needs something hard and firm to bring out the intellect for the writing. It's not purely intuitive the way that art can be, especially abstract painting, right? Right. So if you take like a really abstract painter, they don't need any of this. That's the difference. Okay. Here he has the Venus and Chiron and Capricorn in the sixth, and that's very firm. That's very hard. And the Saturn and Aquarius South Node. This is giving a lot of discipline and intellectual integrity to sort of write well. We're not talking about like Allen Ginsberg type stuff. Loose, smoke weed and just do like associative writing. I don't know. Allen Ginsberg is Gemini. That's all I remember. But anyway, Uranus is station. Mars is slow. Neptune's retro. Neptune retro for an artist, I would think it'd be really good because now they're really questioning their imagination, their creative process, and they're going to be not very easily satisfied. They're going to be like, no, that's no good. We need to rewrite all of it, like keep going back. And then they're like looking at other people's art and they're like, I can't, no, we need to reinvent the wheel, like we're doing it all over. That's the retrograde, it's like scratch it, we'll start over. Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I'd never heard of her, but I looked on a list and she was on there of famous poets. Was one of the most respected poets of the Victorian era. Elizabeth spent her youth at Hope End near Great Malvern, England. The Barrett family had amassed a considerable fortune from the Jamaican sugar plantation. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, nothing important. Late degree, anoretic degree, Virgo. So mostly Libra. So again, we're going to look at Mercury and Venus. Mercury and Venus, everything's in Pisces. I mean, everything, even POF, part of fortune. Almost everything is in Pisces. South node, 10th house. So early rise to career success. North node, Jupiter in the fourth. So retreating into home later in life with Jupiter and Capricorn. Yeah, probably concerned with finances, materialism, security, self-worth. Then an exalted Saturn and conjunct Uranus with Moon in Libra, conjunct the second house cusp. So interestingly, I could have known this before, but I didn't realize. Okay, so the second house also deals with the external appearance, right? So this can be makeup, how a person wears their face, their hair, their clothes, right? Because these are all assets. The face, especially for everyone, but like especially women, right? Their face is an asset. It's like a value. It's like a part of their fortune, right? If they have a good face, it's like like similarly like how like J-Lo took an insurance bought some insurance for her butt, which is like the height of superficiality and materiality, but that would be a second house thing, right? She's insuring her butt, like Oh my God. Give me a break. If I ever do that, just shoot me. Just kill me. I would never do that. I don't even have a butt, so it doesn't matter. All right, so this Elizabeth Barrett Browning is gonna look is gonna be it's gonna have a very exotic look with Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is gonna crystallize, Uranus is going to be like very exotic, right? But it's in Libra, so it's probably, you know, fair and balanced and nice looking. She wants to look nice. It's irrelevant, but anyway. Pisces with the exalted Venus. Jupiter is not, you know, but Jupiter does benefit from this Pisces stellium. Don't get me wrong, right? Jupiter, even though it's not in good dignity here, it's debilitated, conjunct North Node, greatly benefits from all these planets in domicile. And there's a sextile to part of fortune, but also Mercury. And we also got Mars, Pluto, Sun, Sedna, Venus. Very intense. And it's the sixth house. Sixth house is very academic and hardworking, right? So for poetry, taking this creativity, making it very kind of firm, but firming it up by the sixth house. So it's not like, you know, spreading out and just, you know, somebody who's too ethereal, too expansive. They're not going to be a poet because they're just not going to write it. They'll just be like, oh, dreaming all day, like maybe, you know, drinking and doing drugs or whatever, just being lazy, fat, indulgent. They're not going to do anything. Mercury is the MC Lord. It's also in Pisces in the sixth house. Pisces, highly, highly creative, right? If they can bring that creativity into physicality, right? Otherwise, they're just going to be delusional and fantasy oriented. There are a lot of Pisces like that. It's highly delusional. Usually like delusional about themselves. Pisces, one of the most annoying things about Pisces, not always. So don't get it twisted. And I see this, believe it or not, I see this more with the women than the men. The women just get high on themselves. They all think they're like super spiritual and just like you know, not all of them, obviously, but some, you know, super spiritual and like better than everyone else because they're so evolved. It's just like, oh my God. They're so condescending because of it. They're just like, oh, you don't get it. You don't get it. I'm so spiritual. I'm so spiritual. You can't understand me. It's like, fuck off. Reason I know that they're full of shit because the most enlightened beings in the world a lot of times don't have that much Pisces, and they don't go around being like, I'm so spiritual, I'm way more spiritual than you. You can't even understand how spiritual I am. That's how spiritual I am. Like, they don't do that. It's like these Pisces heavy women. They're just like so condescending. Again, not all of them, but there are a few like that. Actually, it's really funny. Like the Pisces guys I know are way different. They're kind of like they do the opposite thing. They're like, I'm not spiritual at all. It's weird. They're just not. Even if they are, they're just like, I'm not spiritual. It's something else. I don't know. This Neptune seems really slow. Let's look at that. Yeah, 3 days. So where's Neptune? Neptune's in Sag. It's in the third house. So for writing, that's great as well. And Mars ruling the third cusp, Pisces. And Neptune is in Sag, which I already said. 0 degrees. 0 degrees. First day of school. Third house. Very slow. Very powerful. Neptune's their most powerful planet. Okay. Let's keep going. Lord Byron. Was a British poet and leading figure in Romanticism. Among Lord Byron's best-known work are the narrative poems Childe Harold's Pilgrimage and Don Juan. The later remained incomplete on his death. He was regarded as one of the greatest European poets and remains widely read. So his fame is not only on his writings, but also on his life, which featured extravagant living, numerous love affairs, debts, separation, and allegations of incest and sodomy. He was famously described by Lady Caroline Lamb as mad, bad, and dangerous to know. Wow, that's awesome. Mad, bad, and dangerous to know. What a compliment. So clearly, we can see something right away. Cancer ascendant with Mars and Cancer. Mars and Cancer is bad, mad, and dangerous to know. I mean, Mars and Cancer is violent, hypersexual, really just can't, like, the Martian passion and aggression is untamed, is what happens, because it's emotionally fueled, right? And if it's emotionally fueled, it's like crimes of passion, right? That's a real thing. Especially in Latin countries where they're very spicy, right? And just a little tangent here. If you don't understand food, here's the thing. Spices make you passionate. That's one clue, one tip, right? Garlic, spices. People eat a lot of garlic and spices, and then meat, then they become very fiery and passionate. So if you want to be very fiery and passionate, which, has its pluses and minuses, you might be overly consumed by passions and commit crimes of passion, but it will make you more fiery and passionate. Food affects the mind and behavior very, very much, way more than people know. This is something very futuristic that the world hasn't really caught on to yet. And it's way more deep and profound than people realize. Anyway, moon's in Cancer, moon conjunct Uranus in Cancer. So very emotional, very emotionally driven, very erratic, hyper violent, hypersexual, hyper driven to his susceptible to passions, crimes of passion, things of passion, movement by emotions. Moon conjunct Uranus is quite crazy, but brilliant at the same time. Brilliant and crazy. The moon's sensitive. I'd rather see it with Uranus with the sun than the moon, but it's still having that influence with the moon, the awareness, the brilliance, especially in Cancer, intuition, heightened intuition, erratic behavior, spontaneous behavior, sudden, quick, actions, especially in the first house with Mars. I mean, okay, second quadrant, right? Because the way that the angles are, but first whole sign house. Yeah. Then we got South Node, Jupiter, Chiron, Gemini, 12th house. And the thing about debilitated planets or detriment, sorry, is that, or any planet in poor dignity, it's still gonna be good in the sign. So Gemini for writing, Jupiter in Gemini is good for writing, right? It's not necessarily bad. It's not a throwaway planet, right? It's good for writing. It's just not good for higher Jupiterian things, right? And even then, there can still be, other factors that trump that override that, like if Jupiter's in poor dignity, but there's tons of planets in Sag or Pisces, that Jupiterian, or ninth house even, that Jupiterian quality is going to be mitigated by that. It's going to be enhanced. So good for writing and creativity. This is a bit of a detective because 12th house Gemini is very detective like. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle has 12th house Gemini planets with Mercury, I believe. I can't remember. Yeah. North node's at the anaretic degree. North node. MC is at the anaretic degree of Aquarius with Saturn conjunct MC, Venus, and Pluto. Saturn Venus conjunction, not necessarily a bad conjunction because it definitely hauls the person in. Saturn makes the person much more naturally restrictive, Venus is indulgence, right? So if the person has Saturn conjunct Venus, their indulgence is restricted. They're less likely to be overly indulgent, food, drugs, sex. But he has, the counter to that, which is all this Cancer placement. So he can go either way, and he's probably met, and there's this direct opposition here between Saturn, Venus, and Moon and Uranus, and that's pretty intense. So I think it makes it very interesting, right? It's in conjunct. Sorry, it's not opposite. It's in conjunct. Saturn's in good dignity, Moon's in good dignity. Mars is not. Well, Mars has an in conjunct to Pluto, a little wide, but still. So he's very polarized, right? The in conjunct is kind of a seesaw effect, and there's also that to the North Node and part of Fortune and Sag, sixth house. The sixth house again for the academia, right? It's very good. And part of Fortune is here, so you could probably make his money through, combination. Just but generally like daily work, daily grind, writing and being academic on a daily basis. Yeah, interesting. And then they call it there's a Yod here, and people like to get all very magical, with magical thinking with astrology, and they're like, oh, yo, that's so special. It's not special. It's not. It's two in conjuncts and a sextile. Just to break it apart. If you want to know what something is, break it apart, demystify it, right? So you just look at each in conjunction separately and realize there is a focus on this Moon and Uranus in the first whole sign house, second quadrant. Moon's ruling the ascendant, so it's the ascendant lord. Mars is ruling the sixth house, right? The academic house. And the 11th house, groups, networks, communities. So he really liked to be involved with groups in a kind of wild, crazy way. Mars leads with initiative and passion and drive. So Mars is a natural leader, but wild. So definitely like, wild partying and sexuality with, groups of people, maybe even orgies. I don't know, right? But could be something like that. But definitely like there's stress on his ascendant lord with these in conjunct. So it's drawing attention to him, not necessarily in a positive way, but definitely drawing a lot of attention to him. And he's mad, bad, and dangerous to know, right? But very creative. Mercury's in Capricorn, very good. If you also have a lot of creative aspects, creative elements in your chart, Mercury in Capricorn is excellent because it can really firm that. It can solidify, especially for communication, writing, the seventh house, writing to others. Sun is in Aquarius, seventh house, and then eighth. That's really eighth house. It's full eighth house because quadrant and whole sign house. The sun is in the eighth. Sun is ruling second whole sign house, but third lord, and fourth, third and fourth. Yeah, so his home was going into the eighth, so definitely a hypersexual kind of guy, dangerous even. Dangerous to know. Look at this. Pluto's stationary. Neptune is stationary. Neptune is widely square. Mercury, again, I'm ignoring Black Moon Lilith, but if we're going to take the Black Moon Lilith literally, then it does relate to like that sexuality, usually more with women, but I mean, hey, whatever, like, guys have a Lilith too. So but it's in Capricorn, but it is in the seventh house, so interesting. Anyway, why opposite Moon and Mars and Uranus, mostly Moon. This is very, very creative, right? And it is a little bit widely squaring Mercury, which is a connection. You know, so even if it's square or in conjunct, there's a connection there. It's just harder to make that work, and it takes a little more effort. So the person, when they're young, they'll probably struggle expressing. You know, he's probably going to have a little bit of difficulty expressing this Neptune, but as he works through it over time, he gets it and he makes this square work, right? And that's going to be very powerful. Neptune, Mercury in the 7th loves to communicate with other people, right? And so he's channeling in this very powerful creative Neptune in Libra in the 5th. So we're seeing a lot of things that really make sense for a creative writer, poet, essentially. Yeah, Neptune's station. Neptune is the slowest planet. Saturn gets excellent points. That's conjunct his MC. That just shows leadership, authority. And Aquarius is you know, really high level abstract ideology. Saturn and Aquarius can be very brilliant. Saturn conjunct Venus is great for artistry because it crystallizes and firms up the creative element quality. Pluto brings in a lot of power, depth, psychology. Sun in the 8th is very deep, also powerful. All right, Lewis Carroll. I included him even though he was mostly an author. Well, he's an author and a poet. He wrote Alice's Adventure in Wonderland and a sequel, Through the Looking Glass, as well as the poems The Hunting of the Snark and Jabberwocky. Really fun poems, really, really fun. I mean, I would read them. You should go read them if you like poetry. You probably have if you like poetry. All right. His facility at wordplay, logic, and fantasy has delighted audience ranging from the children to the literary elite. And beyond this work, his work has become embedded deeply in modern culture, directly influencing many artists. There are societies dedicated to the enjoyment and promotion of his works. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Moon. So he was born, actually, it doesn't say this right here, probably, but he was born in Cheshire, England. So Cheshire Cat, Cheshire, England. I didn't even know that, but I read that. So Moon right on the ascendant. Moon right on the ascendant is very expressive, right? They wear their heart on the sleeves. They're just like an open book. They're just fully out there for everyone to see. Venus, Lilith, Mars in the 1st house. Venus-Mars conjunction. Let's ignore Lilith for a second. Venus-Mars conjunction is very passionate. We see this a lot in artists, and we also see this in like bodybuilders and fighters because it's great for the physical body. Yeah, the Venus really makes it so that the Mars can pull it full energy, right? It's sort of like how you see a good analogy would be like when you have a machine, like a saw that's getting really hot, and it's constantly, the way it has to be is that it's constantly being lubricated with water or oil. I think water mostly. That cools it off. The Venus is opposite to Mars. The Venus cools off the Mars so that the Mars can work, right? So that this Mars can work really hard, going to the gym, or in this case, being very passionate, and it cools it off. It's a good combination. Yin and Yang, male or female. Very nice to see. Mercury's in Capricorn again. You see this a lot with writers because Mercury in Capricorn is just so solid and driven, and like they're the expression, the communication becomes very firm. You know, writing is firm, speaking is not. That's why I like to speak more than write, because I just don't have that my Mercury's not in Capricorn. Well, it's in Taurus, but Jupiter's there, South Node's there. I mean, I don't know. There's probably a lot of factors, but yeah. That earthiness really drives that quality into the writing, the written element. And this Aquarius stellium here, for the fantasy, right? The abstraction, the weirdness, the weird factor, right? The crazy genius, right? The Mad Hatter. That's very Aquarian. The Cheshire Cat, the whole like Alice in Wonderland and the Jabberwock, all the weirdness. And Uranus is there. South Node. All right. So Sun, South Node, Uranus, right? South Node Uranus shows brilliance, genius. Mozart had it. Rumi had it. Who else had it? Henry Kissinger, but he's like a political genius. A lot of enlightened people have it. A lot, and sometimes very traumatized people have it too. But South Node Sun also shows that a person is really going to become drawn to like a bohemian lifestyle. Like they just want to leave society and just go be a hermit or weird somebody living off the land, or I don't know, something very non-worldly, right? Something very non-conventional. Is part of fortunes here, right? Jupiter's in Aquarius, North Node's in Leo in the 8th quadrant, 9th whole sign house. So 8th, 9th, right? It's not the full weight of the 8th because it's trying the ascendant. That's how you know. But it is still pulling in a little bit of 8th elements, but because it's conjuncting the 9th cusp and it's the 9th whole sign house. I feel like this is probably more 9th house than 8th. Chiron is square the nodes, and Chiron is in Taurus, conjunct the 6th house cusp in the 6th whole sign house. So very 6th house. So every day he's being a weirdo because of the 6th house element, right? He's a weirdo every single day. And it's square the nodes, so it's like even more weird, right? It's stressing out the weirdness, really pushing it, driven to be weird, right? And that's playing into it fits very well with this Aquarius stellium. He does have a grand earth trine, which is also excellent for writing. Saturn in Virgo, that's it's trying its domicile, and it's actually trying this Mercury, so it's and that's a mutual reception there, a really powerful one. Saturn and Mercury sign Mercury and Saturn sign, and they're trying each other. Really, really good here. And that's definitely that's the 10th whole sign house and 9th quadrant. Interestingly enough, the MC is in Venus. Venus is sign Libra. Venus is in the 1st. So whenever I see MC Lord in the 1st, the person has to make a name for themselves. They themselves have to be their career, right? So when we say Lewis Carroll, we automatically associate him with, because not everyone, see, there's a difference. Not every name is famous. There's sometimes people have produced works that are famous, and the person who produced those works, we don't even know their name. It's like, oh, I know this work. I never even heard the person who made it. That's where that's the difference, right? So that's where the 1st house comes in. Their name, them themselves become famous. Yeah. And Lewis Carroll is a very famous name. So if you have MC Lord in your 1st house, you have to develop your name. You yourself have to become synonymous with your career, the same, one and the same. Uranus is in conjunct Saturn. That's really interesting. That's definitely a power struggle, but Saturn is ruling. Well, Uranus is in domicile, and Saturn also is in domicile in Aquarius. So, yeah, I mean, the best way I would look at that is sort of like the struggles that we see in his books, like Alice in Wonderland, like where she's the queen wants to chop her head off. There's power play, power struggles. It's kind of insane at the same time because Uranus is in Aquarius and it's opposite Saturn. There's like authority. Saturn would represent leadership, rulership, and so when you have these things, especially for creative people, you can see how it's playing out in their work. It'll possibly play out in their life too, but we'd have to dig deep to find out what's actually going on there. But at least in the work like Alice in Wonderland, drama is good for creativity. So like inconjuncts, squares, oppositions, these things are really good for dramatic works. Mercury's in conjunct the North Node. Yeah, so it's like the inconjunct represents a power struggle. Saturn's retro. Chiron's slow. Mercury's slow. Yeah, Mercury and Saturn have mutual reception. So this Saturn is very powerful. So is the Mercury. But Saturn is, they're both slow. Well, no. Mercury's slow, Saturn's retro. It's probably not that slow. I don't know. Let's see. Nah, 31 days. That's not even close to station. All right. What else? Oh, Moon's the eighth lord. And that's also tying into sort of like the down the rabbit's hole, right? That's eighth house is always like underground, right? So Alice goes down the rabbit's hole into Wonderland. So he's thinking about going deep into things. And there could be some really good intuition here as well. And good psychology. He understands psychology quite well. Intuitively, I'd imagine. All right, so E. Cummings. He's an American poet, painter, essayist, and playwright. His body of work encompasses more than 900 poems, several plays and essays, numerous drawings, sketches, and paintings, as well as 2 novels. It's very popular. Okay. Pluto and Neptune right on the first house. Right in the first house. So very obsessive, but also artistic and creative in Gemini writing. And Ascending Lords in Scorpio conjunct Uranus in the 6th house. Right. So 6th house plays very prominent for writers, but 3rd also should. Right? And that's Moon. We'll get to that. But Mercury conjunct Uranus is very brilliant. Mind is very fast, right? Because Uranus is speed. So the mind's constantly conjuring out ideas. And that's why he can write so much, so prolific. 6th house, daily grind. His mind is constantly moving, pushing, putting out work, right? And then there's the inconjunct to Neptune, especially, but Pluto also plays in there. So very obsessive, obsessively driven. Manic, maybe even manic, because of how fast his mind is working. Also, Mercury's contacting all 3 outer planets, right? So very out there, very could be very intuitive, especially because Scorpio, but definitely drawing from the etheric realm, getting inspired by uh spirit, right? And then we have a Libra 5th house stellium with Venus, South Node, Chiron. South Node Venus in Libra shows that from a young age, from early on, very creative, highly creative, because Venus in good dignity is the 5th house. Sun's exalted Saturn. So Sun's in Libra, but Saturn's exalted, Venus is in domicile. Very powerful. Moon is conjunct Mars in Aries, and that's not so good, actually, because Mars is really strong, Moon is vulnerable. So it's conjunct the 12th cusp. Yeah. He could secretly be, he could probably be very aggressive. Mars is opposite Saturn too, and that's also going to be very, very physically physically aggressive, physically driven, and oppositional, confrontational. Saturn and Mars, these are the two main malefics of the inner planets, and that's really because they're both strong, and Saturn does not do well in Aries, Mars does not do well in Libra, so they're fighting. That's very, he had enemies, I'm sure. He made, he fought people. I don't know, I didn't read about this, but I'm pretty sure he had a very heavy temper based on this. These two sides are harming each other. Saturn and Mars are fighting because Saturn is strong, Mars is strong, but they don't do well in each other's signs, so they don't like each other. And Saturn is stronger than Moon, so this is like taking advantage of somebody who's weak and vulnerable, probably a woman, but it could be a weak man as well. Jupiter is exalted in the second. So that's speaking. That's a voice. That's teaching, that's values, that's resources, assets. So it's a good placement. Probably had good money, good success. Saturn is the MC Lord. It's in good dignity. It's not really making an aspect here, but it is in good dignity, conjunct the sixth house cusp. So again, the daily grind, working hard, being very prolific and academic. Mars is retro. So Mars retro also is more prone to disagreement and fighting because it's going to be more resistant. It's going to have more resistance, and it's going to be more questioning, and it's not a go with the flow kind of Mars. Not that Mars direct in Aries can't also be very aggressive and fighty, but the retrograde, I feel like it's going to be constantly more agitated, especially opposite Saturn. Neptune and Pluto are retro. That's it. So again, I probably have to read up on him just to understand what really was going on there. But Mars in the 12th can also be like they're involving their physicality, but either in a creative way or in with an element of some spirituality or esotericism. Like I think Bruce Lee had a Mars in the 12th, right? And that's why he was so good at martial arts, because there's a spiritual quality there, right? I also know Mars in the 12th, who's a landscaper, right? Because they're physical, but they're involving artistry, and so they're a landscape designer. Sorry, I should say that, landscape designer. So a Mars artist, martial artist, Mars artist, martial artist. Right? Okay, let's keep going. Emily Dickinson. I used to live on Dickinson Street. Was an American poet, though virtually unknown in her lifetime. Dickinson has come to be regarded, along with Walt Whitman, one of the two quintessential American poets of the 19th century. Sorry. Dickinson lived an introverted and hermetic life, although she wrote, at the last count, 1,789 poems. Wow. Only a handful of them were published during her lifetime. All these were published anonymously, and some may have been published without her knowledge. Okay. Okay, Scorpio rising, so very protective. Right? She's hiding herself. And then Mars is in Aries, conjunct Pluto. Wow, so that's intense. Her ascendant lord is conjunct Pluto. Very strong, very powerful. And it's in Aries, right? It's the sixth whole sign house. It's very aggressive. But Pluto is making her because it's Scorpio ascendant, and Pluto is just making her I think it's making her paranoid, especially because it's retrograde, right? So she's just overly protective and overly like wanting to control herself. What Pluto's power and authority, it's almost like self-domination, right? Because this is a self, and Aries also represents kind of like the self originally. But the sixth house again, we're seeing very prominent for you know prolific, very prolific writing. Sun's in Sag, conjunct Venus and Mercury in the second house, so voice. And she's not a speaker, but she's a writer. But like I've said before, I think the second house for a writer still is the voice, but it's the voice of the writer. Writers need voice. Poets need voice. Not necessarily speaking voice, but the voice of the printed word. It gives power, it gives body, it's dressing up, right? Like the second house for the person is like their appearance, not their face without any like dolled up with makeup and jewelry and all clothes and adornments and stuff. The second house is all the adornments. It's the makeup, it's the hair, it's the jewelry, it's the clothes, it's the earrings and the bows and whatever stuff you want to put all over your body and your face and your hair and your being. That's all second house. But at the same time, that's going to be all the adornments that somebody puts into their creation. Jupiter and Capricorn conjunct Neptune, and this is more third house. It's conjunct the third cusp, so Jupiter, and then Capricorn, right, for being very the firm, the groundedness, right? We also see Virgo, Saturn, North Node. Sun is MC is in Leo. Sun's ruling MC in conjunct Mercury and Venus. And then Venus ruling the 7th and the 12th. The 12th is very good for that, for creativity. Moon's in the 12th, also very good for creativity. Mercury is ruling the 8th and the 11th. But the 8th Lord, that's very comfortable for her because she's the Scorpio rising with ascendant Lord conjunct Pluto in Aries. In the 5th, 6th whole sign house. 5th quadrant, 6th whole sign house. So she's all right with that deep, dark, heavy 8th house stuff. It also shows that she was abused. Mars conjunct, so ascendant Lord conjunct Pluto. But because she's so feisty and aggressive, she probably fought back a lot. But when somebody's young, they can't really fight back. But she could have been heavily abused. Uranus is square Chiron. Lilith. If I believed in Lilith, which I'm neutral, Lilith is in the 12th, but it's in Scorpio, conjuncting the ascendant. Opposites Chiron, square Uranus. That feels trauma. That feels like sexual trauma, rejection. So I would say some level of sexual abuse and trauma. Because this is 4th whole sign house. Uranus is in Aquarius. Both Uranus and Aquarius represent trauma. Pluto does not represent trauma. Pluto represents abuse, which can lead to trauma. If we're to believe Lilith, Scorpio naturally represents sexuality, but Lilith also is supposed to represent female sexuality. And Chiron is rejection, and if badly aspected, wounds. Right? If it's not, it just means different and unique. Chiron is not always bad. North node Saturn, especially in the 10th house, represents authority, right? But Saturn delays, right? She wasn't famous during her lifetime, but now she's considered one of the greats. And then, so North node Saturn. And it's the 11th whole sign house. So that's career success, delaying career success, delaying career and career success. But Virgo, Mercury. So something about her writing is going to be very adorned because of the second house. Mars is a little bit slow. Saturn is slow. Pluto and Chiron retro. Plus 2 days. Yeah. So this Saturn is actually almost stationary. So that's again, that's why Emily Dickinson, although not famous in her lifetime, is now like a big boss poet. You know, considered one of the greats. North node Saturn. Saturn's very stationary, powerful. Saturn delays, but it eventually becomes like master, authority, boss. More commonly known as T.S. Eliot, Thomas Stearns Eliot. Was a poet, dramatist, and literary critic. He received the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1948. He wrote poems, The Love Songs of J. Alfred Prufrock, The Wasteland, The Hollow Man, Ash Wednesday, and 4 quartets. In the plays Murder and Cathedral, Cocktail Essay, Tradition and the Individual Talent. Okay, whatever. Libra ascendant with starting from the 12th, Sun in Libra, Uranus, Venus, and Mercury tightly conjunct the ascendant, right? And Venus and Mercury, we saw it in Pisces I'm sorry, Maya Angelou. Now we're seeing it in Libra, where Venus is still strong, conjunct the ascendant, and Uranus a little wider, but still there. So that's very, very strong for a creative type, artist, poet. Okay. Let's see here. So we got North Node in Cancer conjunct the MC. So very driven towards career, public image. Jupiter is in Sag, and Jupiter is ruling the 3rd house cusp in the 2nd house. So that's very good for 3rd lord in the 2nd. I mean, it's the 3rd, it's mixing 3rd because it's the 3rd whole sign house. It's obviously in domicile, but the cusp is at the late degree. Any case, very good for writing, speaking, even singing, but obviously he's not a singer. And then Mars, 2nd lord, 2nd house, right? So again, the voice of his writing, the adornments, adding a lot of body flavor, good facial features, right? He's putting makeup on his writing. He's fixing his hair, wearing nice clothes. If you understand what I'm saying, that the 2nd house is a house of adornments, right? Assets. Making the writing really, really nice. Jupiter is also ruling the 6th lord. It is the 6th lord, 6th house. So again, the daily grind. And then there's probably something to be said about Sun opposite Sedna that brings out a very high level spiritual. I'm taking Sedna to be something very spiritual. It's very far out there. The mythology is not anything that's like, I can't remember. Sedna deals with loss, but it's something like very deep and powerful. and it's very slow moving. So it's something very spiritual. So it's tapping into a higher plane of existence. This is beyond Pluto, so it's even more slower than Pluto, more powerful, but more subtle probably at the same time. Pluto's not very subtle, especially the weight we give to it with our mythology. How much we buy into the fact that Pluto is represented by Hades, right? Plays a lot into it. We're giving the significance to it. The sun is trine, so this is almost a grand air trine, yeah, but it's not. South node is Capricorn again for the earthiness, earthy quality. Not a lot of earth here except for South node in Capricorn, and I guess that's enough. I see in Capricorn. Moon, Pluto, Neptune in Gemini in the 8th house. Moon, Pluto is intense, but Neptune is also here. And yeah, Pluto and Gemini. That was somebody else had that. I can't. I'm sure. Let's see. Moon's ruling the MC, right? So definitely something very deep. And this is kind of like another. His moon is basically conjunct my sun. His ascendant's not Scorpio, but still. And that's actually trine the ascendant, right? So it's actually ninth whole sign house, but still bringing a lot of 8th house flavor in there. So depth, power, kind of like a detective-y quality, pulling up secrets from the depths. Could be even psychic, intuitive on a certain level. Gemini is not really in that psychic on that level, but very powerful sort of deep diving quality. Mars is in conjunct Chiron, and that's not really good because Mars does not do well in Cancer. That's how you know, like if it's a malefic like Mars or Saturn, and their aspect is in a sign that does not work well for that, like Mars does not do well in Cancer, debilitated. That means Mars is not super aggressive in Sag, but still Mars can damage this Chiron, meaning that there can be some wounds, especially around 9th house things, philosophy, religion. Maybe he was rejected by his church, or maybe he was abused by his church, if there was a church involved. I don't know. Or some religion, some philosophy, whatever it was. Most likely Christianity, right? But perhaps something else. So there could be some wounds there. And that's how you have to use Chiron. It's not just, don't just be like, Chiron, wounds, healing. It's like, no, shut up. You're an idiot. Saturn's in the 10th house, and that can delay, but also authority. And Leo still, right? Saturn's not in good dignity, but Leo's very creative. And so a planet that's not in good dignity can still work in the sign that it's in. So for creativity, that's good. It's not bad. Yeah, but Saturn will still be Saturn. So Saturn's going to delay, but it's still going to be good for creative things. Venus is the ascendant lord, obviously. Conjunct Uranus. And so that's adding, the Uranus element is adding a lot of brilliance and fast-mindedness, speeding things up, making him more independent. Everything's fast except for Neptune and Pluto. And some of these other guys. Jupiter and Venus are in very good dignity. Jupiter and Mars is also very good for physicality as well, especially in, when one of these are in good dignity like they are. Perhaps not the second house. That he could wear, maybe he wore muscles like an adornment to look good, but that's not really, as far as I know, second house does not lend itself to physicality as such. But generally, this combination can be good for physical development. Ralph Waldo Emerson. He's most noted for his essays, which I love, especially some of them. I mean, some of them he's a bit wordy. He can get really long and boring, but um, there's several, but one on independence, I think, on something like that. It's very, very powerful. As American essayist, poet, and leader of the Transcendentalist movement in the early 19th century. Very brilliant man, very wise, very evolved. Son of Reverend William Emerson, a Unitarian minister. In a famous line of ministers, he gradually drifted from the doctrines of his peers and then formulated and first expressed the philosophy of transcendentalism in his 1836 essay Nature. Emerson's father, who called his son a rather dull scholar, died less than 2 weeks short of Emerson's 8th birthday, so he died young. Young Emerson was subsequently sent to the Boston Latin School. Okay. See, I mean, like, everyone has a Lilith, but like, if you're just like being like so heavy-handed with Lilith, and you don't look at charts, you're just like all in your head, like Lilith, oh Lilith. You're like, oh, he's such a Lilith figure. He's got it right on his ascendant. He's probably over sexualized, and people think he's all this sexual. Who knows what they say, but nonsense, ridiculous. Anyway, Uranus is a real planet. Uranus has real significance. Uranus is a planet of genius, and it's from the 12th, but close to his ascendant. And the 12th, again, obviously, very good for creativity. Jupiter and Virgo, station, boom. See, and here's the thing: Jupiter is in detriment in Virgo, but station trumps that. It's a powerful Jupiter in the 12th house, very powerful, and Jupiter's ruling the 6th and the 3rd. So again, for writing, that's brilliant, highly creative. It's 3rd and 6th in Virgo, stationary in the 12th. Creative genius, creative teacher. He's combining literature and wisdom. Saturn's also in Virgo. Saturn is fine in Virgo, does quite well. He's very strict, very disciplined, very hard-nosed, very hardworking, good mind, very really puritanical, really like an expert. Mercury is in Gemini, 25 degrees, Sun's in Gemini. So really brilliant man. And if you read his writing, it completely comes through. Like, dude's a genius. He really is. He's such a good writer, so powerful, so on point. Moon's ruling the MC. It's in Leo, conjunct Mars. And yeah, so this is good because MC Lord's in the 10th quadrant, 11th whole sign house, but it is it's conjunct Mars, with Mars ruling the 2nd and 7th. So 2nd for the adornments, the frills, the makeup, the jewelry, the clothing of his writing, of his career, of his public image, right? And he did have that luxurious kind of noble prestige. Mars and Moon in Leo is not going to be as bad as it would be in Aries or Capricorn or Scorpio, where Mars is really super powered, or any of the ones where Mars is really also in poor dignity, right? I'd rather see a neutral sign where Mars is neither strong nor weak, because either one, Mars can do damage. Whether Mars is in Capricorn or Cancer, Aries or Libra, they just do damage in different ways, right? Scorpio or Taurus. Mars is always a malefic. I'd rather see Mars neutral. But if it is, especially if it's in good dignity, It's powerful. I mean, really powerful. Mercury. So this is not bad either because Mercury's square Jupiter, where Jupiter's in Virgo, so Mercury's dignifying. It's exact. So again, that's the case with the square. That takes a little bit of effort. Probably when young, he didn't really have it all. So his father's like, "Oh, he's a dummy," but really, it just took a little bit of work, a little bit of effort, and then he's going to bridge that gap. Mercury's going to connect with Jupiter, with this very powerful Jupiter, and dignify it, bringing the wisdom to the expression, to the intellect. And this eighth, ninth, bridging the gap, moving to the ninth, philosophy, really, but tying in some eighth house, secrets, depth, hidden things, hidden qualities. Eighth house really heightens intuition because your mind is going very deep and you're pulling up gold nuggets of awareness, that because it's like nobody taught you that. How did you know that? Intuition. You say it's like intuition. It feels like it. So intuition, yeah, intuition. Because if your mind is just going into that deep dark space and you're pulling up nuggets of wisdom, secret nuggets of truth and fact and reality, of insights, that's very intuitive because nobody's telling it to you. You're just finding it out for yourself. That's one of the real great things about the eighth house, is that discovery process. 12th house too, eighth, 12th, right? Personal psychology, psychology of others, same thing. Eighth and 12th are very united. So again, part of fortune is right on the third cusp in Sag. Brilliant. That's perfect, right? That makes tons and tons of sense because this is what he did. He was a philosopher and he wrote poetry and he wrote essays. Pluto is in conjunct Mars. That's intense. That represents a struggle. Just father in the eighth, son in the eighth, father missing. Yeah. Father died young. I'm gonna put that out, throw that in there. Pluto and Mars, whether squares like really like driven, but Pluto Mars in conjunct. Um that's a huge power struggle. Um yeah, so there's some he definitely had some so Mars ruling the seventh. It's in conjunct Pluto, Moon. So there's some kind of conflict, definitely. Um, again, I don't know who or what because I don't know the details of his life, but also with Uranus, there's something going on here. Sixth whole sign house, but fifth, it's Pisces. Um, so he's probably, he's trying to resolve various issues and conflicts that um arise in his life. Um, I don't know, something like that. There's definite tension and drive and motivation to overcome some issue, some imbalance of power. Yeah. Also because Uranus is part of it. Mars and Uranus are in good dignity, or sorry, in good aspect to each other, but the Pluto, power, control, abuse, uh, something, and Pisces relating to something subconscious, creative, nebulous. I don't know. Jupiter station here. So Jupiter is the most powerful planet. It's the slowest. Well, it says slow as Pluto. but so it's as powerful as Pluto here, slow as Pluto, but percentage wise, close to station is Jupiter all the way. He's very Jupiterian, philosopher basically. Alrighty. All right, just wanted to check. Oh. Thomas Hardy. I had no idea who he was before this. He was an English novelist, short story writer, and poet of the naturalist movement. Though he saw himself as a poet and wrote novels mainly for financial gain only. The bulk of his work, set mainly in the semi-imaginary county of Wessex, delineates characters struggling against their passions and circumstances. So we should see that in his chart. Hardy's poetry, first published in his 50s, has come to be as well regarded as his novels, especially after the movement. Okay. Leo rising, Sun in Gemini, Mars, Mercury, and then Venus also in domicile in Taurus. So, and that's in the 11th. 11th whole sign, 11th quadrant. So very much 11th house. So concerned with society. Concerned with Gemini, writing, communicating, Venus, beauty, luxury, indulgence. But 11th house is very social. So yes, group networks. But when it says in the town of Wessex, semi-imaginary, that's relating to this because that's the community that he's thinking about. Mars, Mercury can be quite argumentative and aggressive, but Mars Sun is very action oriented, right? These are doers. Moon's in Cancer, conjunct Chiron in the 12th, and that's actually very excellent for creativity because Chiron's weird, and weirdness is, excellent for in creativity. Like it works well, very well, right? When things are weird, they're interesting, they're unique, they're one of a kind, they stand out. The problem is when it gets too weird that it gets rejected by society. But that's not the case when we're talking about a book. A book can be as weird as it wants. It'll probably just make it better. Or a poem. Pluto and Aries in the 10th. So that makes a very powerful, obsessive kind of career. Right? The person really wants there to be out in the public, wants that they're obsessed with it. Right? Because Pluto is very obsessive and desirous. There's tons of desires. It seeks out wherever it is, and pulls. It has tremendous gravity. So a person with Pluto in the 10th, especially in Aries, is going to be very driven to succeed. Obsessively driven. North Node's in Pisces. That's excellent for creativity. Uranus in Pisces also. Neptune in the 7th in Aquarius. That's fine. That's good. Jupiter's in Scorpio. Jupiter is exactly trine Moon. And that's really good. Jupiter exalts in Cancer. The Moon's already in domicile. So, Jupiter in Scorpio is okay. It's very intense, obviously. A retrograde. So he probably believes more in the occult than in religion. And is fueling his 12th house, creativity, subconscious. Jupiter ruling the 6th cusp. And the 9th. Mercury is ruling the 3rd, and that's in Gemini. And South Node in Virgo. And South Node conjunct part of fortune in the 2nd in Virgo. So academic, writing, intellect, intellectual, and then second house for resources, voice, adornments, jewelry, makeup, frills, bells, whistles, that sort of thing. I hope you understand what I'm saying about adornments. When you write, you can write very plain or you can write very adorned. Adorned is very good for poetry because you're adding frills, you're adding makeup, you're adding nice outfit and clothes, you're adding money, you're adding assets, you're adding resources, you're adding wealth, you're adding value to those words. So you can do a few words, but they're very valuable because second house. And then both the second lord and second whole sign house are in the 11th in Gemini. So we see a combination of high level creativity, depth, and writing ability. And then the adornment in Venus and Taurus is similar to that. The beauty, the adornment, the luxury. All right. Jupiter and Saturn are retro. Neptune's retro. And then Venus, Mercury, and Moon are all in domicile. That's very strong. Neptune is the slowest planet. I think it's important to recognize what the slowest planet is, even if it's retro, because that's going to be your most potent planet, most powerful, or the one closest to station, even if it's not the slowest. Saturn is in Sag in the 5th. Well, just generally good. All right, let's keep going. Rudyard Kipling. And again, guys, I'm just trying to pull out the stuff that's relevant and that makes the most sense because there's so many charts that I can't really talk about every placement in depth. Look at these blue lines, a lot of trines, really nice. Grand Earth trine. All right, Rudyard, let's read. Was an English author and poet born in India, a white guy born in India, best known for his works, The Jungle Book, The Second Jungle Book, Just Those Stories, The Puck of Pook's Hill. Okay. Kim poems, including Mandalay, Gungadin, and If, and his many short stories. Right. So he wrote The Jungle Book. I did not know that. Alrighty. Virgo rising. So Virgo rising, especially if the MC's in Gemini, automatically, like you could say, well, this person probably make a good writer. Right? Moon's in Gemini in the 10th. Mercury's in Sag. Not great for Mercury, but makes them more philosophical. Mercury and Sag would actually be more expressive too. And then Mars, aggressive, action-oriented, argumentative, wordy. Mars conjunct Mercury are extremely wordy because that Mars is constantly driving the Mercury. Although not always. Sometimes these people, it depends on the sign, right? Depends on the placement and sign. Right? But a lot of times it does make very incredible verbosity. And then Venus also is here. And then Jupiter's conjunct Sun in Capricorn. So leadership, boss, material. Jupiter's not great there, but Jupiter conjunct the Sun definitely expands the ego. But good for Capricornian things, like being a leader, being an authority. Also for being very disciplined and hardworking and just writing like, as a job, right? Just doing it, not really being concerned whether he wants to or not, just getting down to business, going to work, doing it. That's very Capricorn. There's a mixed reception between Mars and Jupiter too, because Mars is exalted in Capricorn, Jupiter is in domicile. So it's considered mixed. Not very strong because it's not by degree, but it's fourth, fifth. So creativity at home from a young age. Mercury is the MC Lord. Mars is the third Lord. So Mercury and Mars conjunct. Right? The career in the third house. And then Saturn is ruling the fifth and sixth in the third. Right? So creativity goes into writing. Everyday work goes into writing. Saturn's in Scorpio. Saturn in Scorpio is very dark and intense. He wrote the Jungle Book, so I think that's very Sagittarian because it's wild and adventurous, but there's also a quality of Scorpio, especially when we're talking. I mean, he lightens it up. It's very light, but there is some like darkness about it, I guess. Saturn is opposite Pluto. That's really intense because Pluto is in domicile in Scorpio. So that's very heavy. And it's part of this grand Earth trine, very practical. Saturn with Saturn and Pluto is ultra serious. Like usually in the conjunction, it's like I don't actually like saying it because it's like super obsessive. Now here it's opposite. So it's in relationship, it's with others, it's projected outwards. And so there's some like heavy competition here. Very deadly serious competition. Uranus is in the 10th in Cancer. Mercury's retro. Uranus is retro. Pluto's retro. Let's see. None of the planets are actually in really great dignity, but he does have this grand Earth trine and this kite, which makes up for a lot. And then Moon trine North Node, sextile South Node. And then the conjunctions are quite powerful too. When you have planets conjunct each other, they can really bring a lot to that. So interesting. Fourth house. See, Jupiter's ruling the fourth. Sun is the 12th. So that's interesting. Born in India. The fourth house and 12th house conjunct in Capricorn in the fifth. So not necessarily fifth, but Sun and Jupiter conjunct fourth and 12th Lord being born in India. That's really interesting. Yeah. Mars is the third Lord and the eighth Lord. Venus is second Lord and ninth Lord. And Mercury is the MC Lord and the Ascendant Lord. So he's combining a lot of things here in the fourth house. But Sagittarius. adventurous, philosophical, home, land, but also fifth house creativity. So 11th Lord in the 10th, popularity, career success. Really, it's down to the grand earth trine. I think is very powerful here, and then the kite, and then this Sagittarian conjunction. There's nothing. And then Chiron in Pisces is actually highly creative, right? And then Neptune in the 8th is actually, and South Node. It's actually going to be quite psychic, intuitive. He's probably pulling stuff from the ether, inspiration, Neptune. Why a little bit square Sun and Jupiter. That doesn't bother me, actually, especially because Sun exalts in Aries. So again, just a little bit of effort, and it's all good. All right, let's keep going. Pablo Neruda. Was the pen name and later legal name of the Chilean writer and communist politician Ricardo Eliezer Neto. So he's a communist. Okay. Having his work translated into dozens of languages, Pablo Neruda is considered one of the greatest and most influential poets of the 20th century. Neruda was accomplished in a wide variety of styles, ranging from erotically charged love poems, surrealist poems, historical epics, and overtly political manifestos. Some of Neruda's most beloved poems are his Odes to Broken Things, collected in several volumes. Colombian novelist Gabriel Garcia Marquez has called him the greatest poet of the 20th century in any language. Okay. So Pisces. Whenever I hear about communism, I think of two signs, Aquarius and Pisces. Why? Because Aquarius is always concerned with politics and social issues. But Pisces is where everything gets lost. So people that have strong Piscean influence, they like to give things away. So they kind of think that everyone should give things away, which is very communistic, right? Like, let's share everything with everyone. That's very, very Neptunian, very Piscean, right? And it's fine, like if you're doing it out of your own will and everyone's free to do whatever they want. It's a problem when you're like, everyone else should do what I think is right, like everyone else should give away. And then it's just it's dumb. It's just dumb. It's like, ooh, like, oh, give everyone like, it's stupid. Shut up. Right? Like, I don't have to explain it. Right? It's that dumb. Okay. Anyway, South Node, Pisces, Ascendant Pisces. And that's just, anytime you hear communism, socialism, it's Neptune Pisces influence. And Aquarian somewhat. But Aquarius is just, what do we do with society? What's the best way? It poses that question. It doesn't propose an answer. The Piscean answer is, let's give everything away, and everyone should give everything away. You're an idiot. Okay, because Mercury is obviously debilitated in Pisces, so there's no logic to Neptunian logic. Pisces is illogical. Spiritual, right? And it's not saying that somebody, like, everyone has Pisces, everyone has Neptune, but when it's just overly heavy on that side of things, that's the result. I'm not picking on Pisces. It's just that's where the communism comes from, which is great, again, if it's voluntary. And then look at this Cancer stellium, huge Cancer stellium, 5th house, right? Neptune, Mars, Moon's in domicile. Mars is not. Venus, Mercury, but 5th house, Cancer is very heartfelt. So really, like, So he's able to write in all these styles. Is trying the ascendant, south node, part of fortune, right on his ascendant. Very powerful water, very, very deep feeling. Nothing in Scorpio, right? But basically, you know, tons of Cancerian influence. MC Lord Jupiter in the second house, Aries. Again, for the adornments of the words, being able to write beautifully, to write one sentence and have it be worth $1 million. That's what the second house does because of the adornments. He writes a sentence or two sentences or three sentences and he dulls them up. He puts makeup all over it, puts $1 million earrings and necklaces and jewelry and fancy dresses and clothes. Or suits, the fine Italian suit, right? And everything's trimmed and perfect, right? That's what the second house does for like a poet or a writer or speaker. And his Jupiter exactly trine Uranus, and Jupiter rules Sag, so it's dignifying this Uranus, right? So brilliance, public brilliance, brilliant career. And retrograde, so like independent, just really doing his own thing, really not giving a shit what anyone else has done ever or will ever do. He's like, I'm the only person in the universe. This is what I'm doing. Fuck everyone. Saturn's in domicile in 12th, and that's good also for creativity because it's in good dignity, right? Saturn's mastery, Saturn's authority. And it gets a triseptile to the sun and moon and Venus. All right. Now, sun's ruling the 6th. Mercury's ruling the 4th. Pluto's in the 4th. Pluto in the 4th. Pluto in the 4th is square the nodes. So he was probably abused as a child. Because 4th house and square the nodes. Squares are agitators. They agitate. They're difficult. They challenge. And Pluto's abuse. Pluto in the 4th, I generally do not like to see. It shows abuse as a child. Very difficult to overcome. Could be sexual abuse, but in Gemini, probably verbal abuse. That's probably what it was. One of his parents. Could be both parents because Mercury, Venus, Mercury is going to the 5th. Mercury's conjunct Venus. Remember Mercury, Venus? We've seen that twice already. Conjunct. Now here, Venus is not exalted or in domicile, but Moon is. Saturn and Uranus are retro. Sun's exalted, Saturn's domicile, Moon's in domicile. Oh no. Jupiter and Sun. Yeah. Jupiter, Sun, mutual reception. And I did not notice that. So that's 2nd and 5th by exaltation. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, Sun's exalted in Aries. So 2nd and 5th Lord, mutual reception, Jupiter, Sun. Not too far. So that's really powerful as well. The 2nd house really plays strong for poets because of the ability to make value, to adorn in a small amount. Like I think novelists have more stronger 3rd houses. Poets seem to have stronger 2nd houses, and 5th house, obviously, right? 12th house, a lot of the other houses, but those 2 houses in particular. All right, let's keep going. Sylvia Plath, my favorite. actually, just because of the power, the depth, the rawness. And she killed herself. So it's like it just adds legitimacy to her poems. And I'm sorry that she had to kill herself. I really am. I think it's devastating. She left 2 kids behind. It's devastating, but her work was great. She was great. So 29th degree Aquarius rising. So we could look to Saturn, and we could also look to Jupiter, both, and Uranus and Neptune. So we can really look to 4 planets for her ascendant lord. No wonder she was so divided. Look, Saturn's over here, Jupiter's over here. Jupiter is exactly conjunct the South Node. Saturn's in good dignity here in the 11th, right? She was part of a poetic community, a leader of the poetic community, obviously. Saturn in domicile. But if we look at Jupiter, it's conjunct South Node. And what happens with Jupiter conjunct South Node? Why Jupiter conjunct South Node, but it's not my ascendant lord, or one of my ascendant lords? What it means is that there's detachment from the self, and it's exact. It's really exact to the degree it's within a few minutes of each other. So she got tired of herself. She got tired of her body, and she wanted to disappear. Pisces. South Node Jupiter represents wisdom and teacherly ability, especially in the 7th. So she's probably an excellent teacher. And Venus and Neptune are also here close to the nodes. So this shows tremendous skill in Virgo. Virgo deals with academia, writing, obviously, other things as well. But here, writing. And then as she got older, she just North Node's here all alone with herself. I have North Node in the 1st house. This is a very lonely place. Very, very lonely. Pisces, it's just her alone wanting to disappear. That's really what this is. And she's like, I'm tired of me. I'm tired of myself. I'm tired of my body. Even though I'm an excellent poet, because South Node Venus, Jupiter, Neptune also co-ruling Pisces. Right. She got tired of herself and wanted to disappear. And then Moon's in the 8th house, Sun's in Scorpio, Mercury's in Scorpio. So she's just like, her head's all about death and darkness and escapism. And even though she was such an amazing poet, she just couldn't. She's like she tried to kill herself many times. Her poetry is so powerful. Go read it. We got the Mars Mercury square, where Mars is in domicile. Mars rules Scorpio. So this dignifying this Mercury. Mercury is ruling the 4th. So early childhood success, and 9th elevated. She was very smart from a young age. And yeah, she had to work at it. She didn't have like tremendous success right away, but she did, she worked really hard, and she achieved success pretty early on. That Mars in the 6th with a square to Mercury really drives that Mars to work hard. Sun is the 7th lord. Moon is the 5th lord. 5th in the 8th. Pluto in the 5th. Pluto in Cancer. Very empowering to women. Pluto in Cancer. Women really had to prove themselves during this time. It was a generational thing. They had to really grasp the reins of power and step into positions of leadership and authority and control. And that's what they did. Mars also trine Uranus, where Uranus is the co-ruler of Aquarius, and then Mars is in domicile in Aries. So that's really powerful. And Uranus is in the second house. So she's dulling up her writing with Uranus and Aries. So feisty, powerful, potent, shocking. And if you read her poetry, it is very shocking. It's not boring at all. That's what I love about it. It's so infused with the darkness, but it's not like Poe. Poe was so excessive. She was sharp and cutting and brutal and powerful, but also with levity, like humor. That's Uranus too. And Uranus has the inconjunct to Mercury, struggles, tension. Uranus is retro, so highly independent. Pluto's retro and seems quite slow. Pluto's her slowest planet. Mars and Sun mutual reception. Yes. So that's, I would say, yeah, it's definitely, well, definitely sixth Lord and ninth. Sixth and ninth Lord. Even though it's ruling the sixth cusp, it's tough because most of her first seventh house is seventh house descendant. Most of her seventh house is in Virgo. So sure, some seventh house, but mostly sixth, because Mars is also in the sixth, and then ninth, sixth, ninth. So daily grind, and then she, college, academia type stuff, studying, teaching. She married a professor, or she married a poet. But I think he was also like taught in college. So bringing all these things together. And Pluto is her slowest planet in the fifth, and Pluto is sextile Venus really, really perfectly exact. All right. I mean, normally if Saturn is in Capricorn, I would expect this person to be able to withstand anything, but because of this, the way this is, South Node, Venus, Jupiter, Neptune, with Jupiter being the primary first house ruler, I'm taking it to be, even though it's Aquarius, it's so difficult because 1 minute more would have been in Pisces. In any case, you could call Saturn an ascendant lord, but Jupiter really is also as well. And it makes much more sense considering that she killed herself. Saturn's in good dignity here. So we really have to take Pisces to be more the first house than Aquarius. Aquarius is more the 12th house. And that would make sense as well, because 12th Lord and excellent dignity, her creativity, very powerful, very, intact authorities, mature. And then this North Node in Pisces, just disappearing, wanting to disappear. Now we'll look at Poe. Scorpio rising, same as me. And then he's got North Node conjunct Uranus. Same as me, but he's got it more tight. And then this Pisces stellium, fifth house. Tremendous. Venus, Moon, Pluto, Jupiter, Sedna. Right? Venus exalted, Jupiter domicile. Right? But it's kind of excessive, right? Because he's got Venus, Moon, Pluto, yeah, Jupiter. So dark, but then like if you actually look at it, if you take out the dark element, right, and just look at his writing, it's so excessive. I mean, a lot of people like it. For me, it's just like, I don't know. I prefer the sharpness of Sylvia Plath to the overindulgent kind of poetry. But anyway, definitely a brilliant writer, very dark. I mean, he's got the same ascendant in me. I'm like, he's dark. But so much Pisces, and he was an alcoholic too, and he died young. Mars is in the 12th in Libra, right? Definitely not somebody who's gonna live a long life at this like this, but highly creative. Um, not very good. He was not like he did not live like this very nice life. He was, alcoholic, poor, really just kind of reckless, but wrote, you know, beautiful dark poetry and stories. And then again, he's got this, South Node 7th, North Node 1st, died young. Sudden death. Well, I don't know how sudden it was, but I think he killed himself with alcohol. Yeah. The nodes on the ascendant descendant axis is very difficult. I have it. Yeah. You have to be able to endure loneliness, especially when there's no personal planets in the first house, because first house deals with self. Personal planets would mean, okay, you're going to have some people flock around you while you're, self-obsessing, um, really, or self-mastery, that's the more evolved expression. But if there's no personal planets, I mean, Scorpio is hard and dark, right? Not very comfortable. Scorpio is not comfortable. Uranus is not comfortable at all, right? And there's no personal planets here, so he's like destined to be alone. And then his ascendant Lord Mars and Libra and poor dignity in the 12th house. Yeah, with this Pisces stellium, definitely not good for long life. But Mercury is Cazimi, the sun, in Capricorn. So, and that's third house. So for writing, excellent, excellent. Creative writing, brilliant. And then again, the second house influence with Saturn and Neptune in Sagittarius. Where Jupiter is also in good dignity in Pisces in the fifth house. Um, so Saturn and Neptune in the second can create a weird look because Neptune is expansion, but also pretenses. It's fake. It's imagination. And Saturn kind of solidifies it. So if you look at the face of Edgar Allan Poe, there's something strange about it. Now, this might be more obvious with a woman because she's more likely to, you know, really dull up her face with tons of makeup and jewelry or even plastic surgery. Uh, Heavily adorned. And that's his writing, heavily adorned and somewhat contrived, even though it's very, powerful and amazing and a lot of people love it. It's yeah. I know, I feel like kind of like, oh, you don't love Poe? Well, as far as a poet, no, I don't love him. He's good. But MC Lord, Sun in the third, conjunct Mercury. Mercury is ruling the 8th and 11th. So POF is in the 11th in Virgo. So Virgo for writing, that makes sense. 11th house, so community. He would do well to belong to a community, a writers guild. I don't know if he did. I don't know that much about Edgar Allan Poe. You know. Mars is slow. Everything else is fast. If he had more retrogrades, I want to say that he might have been able to pull himself out from the gutter a bit more, but he has no real resistance. He's just like, I'm an alcoholic. That's it. I don't know what maybe he did drugs too. I don't know. This Pisces 12th house. Anyway. Ezra Pound. 0 degrees Aries rising. Wow. So this is like the natural zodiac. Brilliant. And he's got Sedna right on the ascendant. And there is something very refined about Ezra Pound. If you read his poetry, it's almost like so profound it escapes you. It's just like something that evaporates very quickly, right? Like 100% alcohol. It's just like, but it's like very expensive, like something that's like 180 proof. It's just like if you leave it too long, it's just gonna float away. You gotta sip it, and it's like, whoa, like you could just get like a thumble. Whoa, like because he wrote these really short, powerful poems that were very hard to make sense of, but you could feel them. At least that's how my mind interprets them, and maybe, and that's opposite Uranus too, so definitely a level of brilliance there. North Node conjunct Jupiter in Virgo, 6th house, right? So Virgo is very perfectionist. Jupiter, teacher, guru. North Node Jupiter can make a teacher. South Node Jupiter can also make a teacher, but it's different. It's just South Node Jupiter is more natal. North Node Jupiter is kind of learned. MC at 0 degrees. That's amazing. 0 degrees Capricorn. And POF in this Capricorn. I didn't read. Was an American expatriate poet and critic who was a major figure of the modernist movement in the early to mid 20th century. He was the driving force behind several modernist movements, notably Imagism and Vorticism. Okay. So Mars is the ascendant lord. It's in Leo, along with Moon in the 5th house. So very creative. Jupiter is obviously the 12th cusp in the 6th. So creativity every day. North Node conjunct the 12th lord in the 6th house in Virgo. And Jupiter in Virgo is not in good dignity, but it is good for Virgo things, which is mundane daily writing, just writing every day, becoming a master by writing every single day. Neptune also trine North Node Jupiter. Pluto in Gemini, Chiron in Gemini in the 3rd. So powerful writing and very creative, very unusual. This Chiron is fine. It's acting very normal. It's just being, adding strangeness, weirdness, which is excellent for, something like poetry, right? Neptune is in the 2nd. Also good. Neptune in Taurus. That's going to be excellent for, poetry. The adornment. Saturn and Cancer in the 4th. That's a bit difficult. Definitely some parents who could have been overly restrictive, but not in a balanced way, very emotionally, biased. And that's just somebody who can who's driven by their emotions rather than logic or what's right. And so Saturn, when Saturn's ruling by emotions, it's not fair, right? They're just like, I like you, I don't like you, therefore you don't get anything because I don't like you, but I love you, it's something like that. Sun and Mercury in the 8th, deep and powerful in Scorpio. Trine Saturn. And it doesn't really help Saturn, but it is very powerful. Mercury's the 3rd lord. in the 8th house, and the 6th lord in the 8th house. Potent. 8th house has a lot of weight to it. And then Venus is the 2nd lord, and the 7th lord in the 9th and Sag. That's fine. Really? So North Node Jupiter, even though it's in Virgo, it's in the 6th. That's excellent. Sedna Uranus opposition. I think that's really making his poetry very refined. Right. And then South Node Pisces in the 12th. Obviously, is going to be very creative. And Moon, Mars is the ascendant lord in the 5th. It's very creative. The 8th, it's just very well balanced and quite brilliant as well. Pluto in the 3rd, obviously. So Saturn's retro. Neptune's retro. Chiron's retro. Oh, Mars, Sun have a mutual reception. Yeah, duh. But it's not by degree, which makes it less powerful, but it's still good. All right, Sun is dignifying Moon. And that's 5th and 8th lord. It's just very powerful creativity. But I think what really makes it high level is this Sedna opposite Uranus. Seems really nice. Well, that's one thing, one factor. Right. Shel Silverstein. Also the Mars Sun is also. All right. Was an American poet, singer-songwriter, cartoonist, screenwriter, director, and author of children's books. He styled himself as Uncle Shelby in some works. Translated in more than 30 languages, his books have sold over 20 million copies. He was the recipient of 2 Grammy Awards, as well as Golden Globe and Academy Award nominee. Jewish, Academy of Fine Arts, Army. Okay. Sag rising with Jupiter exalted in Cancer. Conjunct Pluto and Mars. So very powerful. So Jupiter in Cancer is very caring, very nurturing. They have a philosophy. It's probably about, like family and love is the most important thing. And it's not wrong. They're very caring people. Right? So Uncle Shelby. But Mars in Cancer, Pluto in Cancer. He's not all love and light, and he obviously has his other side, and it's moving into the 8th house. So draw your own conclusions there. He's also got Moon and Venus in Scorpio. So he definitely has his dark side as well. Venus is the MC Lord, as well as the 5th and 6th cusp. 5th whole sign house, or rather 6th whole sign house, but 5th and 6th cusp. Excuse me. Moon is ruling the 8th. It's in Scorpio. So there's something very dark as well about him. And then Ascendant Lord Mars, trine Moon, and then Venus trine. So this is very powerful because you got a triple conjunction in Cancer, and then a double conjunction, and then Moon and Mars are in mutual reception exactly with this trine. So this is really powerful. These 3 with these 2. Because they're dignifying each other. Moon's dignifying this whole trinity, and Mars dignifying Moon and Venus. Right? And Jupiter's already exalted. Moon's dignifying it even more. So he's basically a really good person. He has his dark side, obviously, dark shadow, but because Jupiter is in Cancer and exalted by the Moon, or dignified by the Moon, it's really good. Mercury's in Virgo, retrograde, ninth house. Neptune's also in Virgo for writing. That's excellent. Sun's in Libra. Oh, that's okay. I mean, Libra is generally good for a lot of things, including writing. Saturn's in domicile in Capricorn in the first house. POF in the second house for the adornment of his words. Fourth house, Uranus set in the north node. Interesting. So south node in the 10th is going to lead to early rise to success. North node in the 4th shows retirement, like settling after in mid-age into the home and, you know, just kind of sitting back on his previous success. Uranus in the 4th can represent trauma from early childhood. Uranus can be trauma, especially if it's retrograde. It's probably going to be more likely to be traumatic, especially in a sign like Aries. That could be physical abuse. And Uranus has a square to Mars, and Mars is dignifying it in Aries, but still, this could be something quite physically abusive, especially early on. And in conjunct to the moon, that's also something with mother. Either his mother was involved, his mother was abusing him, or his mother was abused. Maybe either one. Could be both. Sun's in Libra, so father is probably kind of a pushover. Mother is very strong. Moon's in Scorpio. When moon is in Scorpio, the mother tends to be very obsessive, right? But Venus moon shows obsession, but also love. But it's very moon Venus is also very indulgent, right? So interesting. So I'm sure he loved his mother, but his mother was very, very controlling. And maybe upset. Also, the opposition to Chiron. So serious mother issues, I think. Abused by mother. Perhaps mother was abused. Perhaps mother rejected him. At the same time, wanted to control him. Anyway. But mother was also very supportive. Really, really into his mother. Like all about his mother. Probably tons of mother issues. She loved him, but she was also a source of pain and struggle. Anyway, in any case. Mercury's retro. Uranus. Sorry, I'm taking my time. Just kind of looking at things. Mars, moon. Yeah, we already looked at that. It's 11th and 8th. Community going into secrets. So his mother was probably part of some community that had some deep, dark secrets. Let's keep going. Alfred Tennyson. Was a poet laureate of the UK and remains one of the most popular English poets. Much of his verses were based on classical mythological themes, although In Memoriam was written to commemorate his best friend, Arthur Hallam, fellow poet and classmate at Trinity College, Cambridge, who was engaged to Tennyson's sister, but died from a cerebral hemorrhage before they were married. One of Tennyson's most famous work is Idealist of the King. Idealist, whatever. A series of narrative poems based on King Arthur and the Arthurian tales, as thematically suggested by Sir Thomas Malory's earliest tales on the legendary king. All right, so Moon right on the ascendant, well, 13 and 21, and then Venus. We're gonna ignore Lilith. Yeah, so creative, very expressive, Gemini writing, so communication. Moon is ruling the second and third. Second whole sign house, second cusp, third cusp. Venus is not ruling a cusp here, but it is the fifth whole sign house. So that makes sense. And the 12th. So fifth and the 12th, that's excellent. Mercury's in the second whole sign house, third cusp. Sun's in Leo in the fourth and the IC, but IC is on the third whole sign house. And POF, creative writing. North node in Libra, but then Mars and Uranus are conjunct in Scorpio. That's very explosive, very powerful, very spontaneous, very sudden. Sixth cusp. Fifth, yeah, it's like barely in the fifth, but mostly sixth. It's very aggressive. Well, Saturn's in Scorpio. Neptune is in Sag. Very interesting. So ascendant Lord's in the third. That makes sense. Gemini ascendant in the third, but in Cancer. So mixing second and third. So that's very good for poetry. Right? Chiron is conjunct the MC. And again, this Chiron, it is opposite the sun, so there could be some tension, especially with the father, or there could be some deformity to his face, but Chiron conjunct the MC shows a career that is based around something very creative and different, unique. Aquarius, brilliant, abstract, political, social, maybe groups, networks, probably, but just a very high level Aquarian abstraction type thinking, and very creative and weird. Yeah, definitely he could have had issues with rejection, right? Being too weird, fear of rejection, things like that. But he's a celebrated poet, so obviously worked out in the end for him. He does have South Node Jupiter in Aries in the 11th. Yeah, it's an 11th whole sign house, 11th quadrant, so 11th, clearly. So career success, early career success, and a teacher in a group teacher, could definitely teach. Pluto in the 10th and Pisces, powerful and creative career. Pluto is square the moon. So could be abused by his mother. Again. Very interesting. Fourth EMC or IC is ruled by Leo, and Leo's in domicile. Sun's in domicile. So historically that would be more fatherly figure. But that moon's right on his ascendant with that square to Pluto. So I don't know. Death, maybe death. Could be. Pisces, disappearing. Death of the mother. Maybe that really affected him. He's very close to his mother. I'm just guessing because I don't know. Um, but yeah, you can see that he's very, very literary and creative. And he literally has no earth. So his writing is not going to be very practical or grounded. And I have no idea what he wrote, so but it's not going to be earthy. It's going to be weird and creative and emotional, and he's got all the water signs, but not by degree. And let's see, air, fire, fire, air, fire. He's all air, fire, and water. All right. Sun and moon are sextile. That's really nice. Okay. Well, the Saturn seems quite slow. Jupiter slow. Neptune. The outer planets are retro. Moon, Mercury. Yeah, I didn't even see that. Yeah, so that's third and first lords. That's perfect for writing. Mutual reception. Even if it's not by degree, it's still in effect. It still works. It's just more powerful when it's by degree. All right. That's everything. Walt Whitman. I looked at his chart already with the writers, but or just in general before. He was more of a poet than a writer. So very powerful. Pisces stellium in the 12th. Sedna, Pluto, Chiron, Saturn, Aries rising with Mars and Aries conjunct the North Node, and Venus in domicile in Taurus in the second house, and Mercury in Taurus, right? And then Sun in Gemini in the third. What's really interesting about Walt Whitman is that, I mean, if you read a little bit about his life, he's very nature oriented, Taurus, but also like he loved to eat meat, and he was bisexual, I think, or if not completely gay, I think it's just bisexual. He's very masculine, but very feminine at the same time, and he loved to bathe nude. He's almost like an animal, right? Like eating raw meat, bathing nude, all hairy, like he just kind of lived this animal life, and he loved it, and he wrote great things as well, right? It's like it's just kind of funny. Um, but you can see like the second and third house again. Moon and Leo in the fifth. Very strong 12th house. Jupiter in Aquarius, so like a teacher in a group setting, popular in a group popularity. Neptune and Uranus and Sag in the ninth. Um, so radical philosophy, right? Really radical, create kind of nebulous, expansive philosophy. Um, Uranus trying the ascendant Lord Mars in good dignity, so very radical, right? And basically Grand Fire trine. I mean, Moon's a little wide, but you got this, and then Moon, Neptune. So very passionate, strong leadership, very inspirational. Neptune square Pluto in Pisces. Neptune co-rules Pisces, so that's actually not bad. But Pluto, Saturn, and Pisces in the 12th, and Chiron, very serious, heavy, kind of creativity, something interesting. South node 7th, North node 1st. He's really into himself, right? North node conjunct the Mars. So he's the opposite of somebody like Sylvia Plath, who had South node conjunct the Ascendant Lord. He has North node conjunct the Ascendant Lord. So he's all about life. He's all about himself. He's about celebrating life, and he's like had a very positive attitude, right? Because he wanted to live, and he's just very like bohemian. Not in the same sense that South Node Sun is bohemian. Just because he's such a beastly kind of character. Mars in Aries, Venus in Taurus, Mercury in Taurus, North Node, Ascendant in Aries, North Node in Aries, right? Just this both masculine and feminine North Node in the first house conjunct the Ascendant Lord. So he's all about himself, self-mastery, self-obsession too, in a very kind of strong, bold way. Uranus is retro, so highly independent. Jupiter, Saturn, mutual reception. Saturn, Jupiter, yeah. So that's 11th and 12th Lord. So creative community, artistic community. Oscar Wilde. Oscar was Wilde. Was an Irish poet and playwright. After writing in different forms throughout the 1880s. He became one of the most popular playwrights in London. He's best remembered for his epigrams and plays. His novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, which is very dark novel. I only saw the movie adaptation, so maybe the novel is a little bit different, but the movie was it was interesting, but not great in my opinion. In the circumstances of his criminal conviction for the gross indecency for consensual homosexual acts, well, he's gay, but I think he was flagrantly gay. I don't know. I think he was like flaunting it or something and not keeping it under wraps. Imprisonment and early death from meningitis at age 46. So Virgo rising, what's Mercury doing? Mercury's in Scorpio with the South Node. Ascendant Lord, South Node, Sylvia Plath. Right? It's not in poor dignity in Scorpio, but it's conjunct the South Node. That's unfortunate. North Node in Taurus, but Uranus. So it's not just North Node Uranus, which is radical independence, right? Especially ninth house, religion, philosophy. We are very radical philosophy, changing philosophy that's not sanctioned by the church by any means, right? And then Grand Earth Trine as well. But South Node, Mercury, definitely not being very careful about his self and his body, but it's in the third house. And then he's got Venus and Sun in the second house. And Venus is strong, Sun is weak. So what's Venus? Well, so Venus is strong. He's a man, gay guy. Okay, that's one of the things that we see again and again and again. For a man, if Venus is strong, Mars is weak, or Mars is neutral, then definitely they can become gay. But also, not only that, indulgent, highly indulgent, and concerned with looks. Right? He was all about looks. And you look at the picture of Dorian Gray. I'll tell you what Dorian Gray is if you haven't seen it or read it. Like some rich royal whatever good looking young guy becomes like has a magical painting of him where it's painting when he's young, and the painting's magical, and because it's magical, he never ages, but he lives this very extremely indulgent life. First of all, he's rich. Second of all the girls love him, and he learns how to seduce them. He's drinking, doing drugs. He's also gay. He's having sex. So he's bisexual in the story. So this young guy is having sex with everyone, rich, living this highly extravagant life, carefree, just becoming like almost ridiculously egotistical. And the painting is becoming old. The painting is aging, but he's not, right? And he gains this reputation of this, rich playboy, but it doesn't work out for him at the end, and all sorts of weird stuff happens. But you can see this is his fantasy, Oscar Wilde, right? Second house, Venus, sun's weak, Venus is strong. Looks, right? The adornments, the clothes, the money, the food, the women, right? All the women in this sense would be an asset, right, for him, or so men as well, right? But anyway, yeah, it's just highly, highly indulgent, but good for writing. And then part of fortune is conjunct South Node in the third house, Scorpio. Mars, third lord, in the third house, in Sag, but moving to the fourth. Jupiter conjunct Chiron in Capricorn. Jupiter conjunct Chiron is not bad, because Jupiter helps Chiron, although it's not good dignity in Capricorn. Materialistic, right? Like the Dorian Gray guy, highly materialistic. Again, it's all in context. So you can have Jupiter in Capricorn and not be highly materialistic. It's just one factor. But he is. I mean, it's playing into this Venus and this, the Libra, second house Venus, Sun, and South Node, Mercury, ascendant Lord. But Jupiter Chiron really expands the creative weirdness of Chiron. Chiron can be very creative because it's strange, it's odd, and it's in the fifth house. And Capricorn lends itself very well to writing. Neptune and Pisces trine the ascendant Lord Mercury in the third house in Scorpio. Right, the Scorpio element for that weird dark magic, right, occultic type stuff, which is the picture of Dorian Gray. So he's got a lot of trines. He's got the grand earth trine, and then he's got two legs of a water trine. If we take Lilith in there, that's almost the grand water trine. Sedna is also in Pisces. Neptune and Pisces are highly creative. We have Neptune and Pisces now, right? So I think Oscar Wilde would love these ridiculous wokesters. You fit right in. You might be even transgender. Jump on the bandwagon. Oh boy. Moon's in Leo in the 12th. Square this Uranus North Node. So definitely like crazy, right? Radical, defiant. Uranus is retrograde, Pluto's retrograde, Saturn's retrograde. So he's not really caring for the law. He's not really caring for authority. It's like, I'm gonna do whatever I want. Leave me alone. Saturn retro, Uranus retro, Neptune retro, Pluto retro. I mean, I love retrogrades, but they can get a person into trouble because they're more rebellious. They're going against convention. And people don't like that. William Wordsworth. Scorpio rising. Mars in Aquarius in the third house writing. So Neptune and Moon in Virgo conjunct the MC, straddling the MC. Mercury in Pisces. Mercury in Pisces is not very logical, good for creativity, good for intuition, even psychic intuition. Chiron, creative element, especially in Pisces. Square Jupiter. But Jupiter is in domicile, and it also rules Pisces, so it's dignifying this Mercury, which is ruling the MC and eighth cusp. 29th degree, but late degree, because if you change quadrant systems, it might move. Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I'd have to see, but whatever. Regardless. And again, he has the nodes on the seventh first axis. So definitely moving in towards himself as he gets older, self-mastery. But Jupiter's here. Jupiter's still in the first, moving to the second, widely, but both in Sag. Jupiter in Sag, natural philosopher, teacher, wise person. Sun's exalted in Aries with Venus. So that's better. I like to see if Sun is with Venus, I like to see it in Aries. I mean, I have it in Gemini, which is neutral, and I'm very aware of that. My Venus can really sidetrack me, pull me away from, doing my life's work. But Venus and Sun in Aries, now they're going to be much more focused, much more driven, much more action oriented. So that's not as bad. Yeah, Venus gets hurt. Venus is not good. So relationships, partnerships, he might be overly aggressive, especially when gets into, like burnout phase. This Venus easily gets burned out, so you can be very irritable at times. And then there's a square to Pluto. That's actually not great because Pluto squares can be abusive. Third whole sign house, second house, second quadrant, Capricorn. So maybe abuse by authority, verbal abuse by authority, something like that. Or damage to his self-worth because second house. Mars is the ascendant lord. It's in the third house, Aquarius. So let's see. Saturn is ruling the third cusp. And Saturn is in Cancer. Saturn's not in good dignity in Cancer. It's in the eighth. But Saturn in Cancer in the eighth, I've noticed I've seen it be very charitable. Because Cancer does care. Saturn in Cancer, not in good dignity, but eighth house, still relating to others, shared resources, but this can be projected outward, right? Any poor dignity planet can be projected outward, meaning that if the person can't embody it, they use it it's an inverse relationship where it manifests in the life. So eighth house, shared resources, but instead of taking, it's giving, if that makes sense. I've seen it work. It's not just speculative. It does work that way. It can be. I'm not saying it is. Maybe he's very greedy, right? But maybe he's very charitable as well. There's a trine to Mercury, but dignities don't change here, really. I mean, Mercury's already in poor dignity. Neptune's retro. Everything else is direct except the nodes. Jupiter's in domicile. So when everything's direct, then the person, their creation, their personality is very flowing, very smooth, and it works very well for writing, speaking, music. It just creates a very, very nice flow. The retrogrades tend to halt things, stop things, bring them back on themselves, reiterate, rewrite, redo, question, resist. All right, so that's Wordsworth. And I wonder, it's funny, like, do these people, like, did he name himself Wordsworth? Or did somebody do that for him? Did I read this? He's a major English romantic poet with Samuel Taylor Coleridge helped launch the Romantic Age, in English literature. Almost all of his planets are direct, so this is very romantic, right? Lyrical ballads. Wordsworth's masterpiece generally considered to be The Prelude, an autobiographical poem of his early years that was revised and expanded a number of times. It was never published during his lifetime. It was only given the title after his death. Up until the time, it was generally known as the poem to Coleridge. He was England's poet laureate from 1843 until his death. It's very interesting. Moon is ruling most of the 8th house. That's in Virgo, conjunct in the 10th. So, and then Neptune. Neptune's retrograde. It's the only retrograde. William Butler Yeats. Let me read. Was an Irish poet, dramatist, and one of the foremost figures of the 20th century literature. He was driving force behind the Irish literary revival, and together with Lady Gregory and Edward Martin, founded the Abbey Theatre and served as its chief playwright during its early years. Yeats was a pillar of the Irish literary establishment. He was an Irish senator for 2 terms, so he's a politician as well. And he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, what the Nobel Committee described as his always inspired poetry, which in a highly artistic form gives expression to the spirit of a whole nation. Okay. Aquarius rising. So primarily Saturn and North Node. Right? So North Node conjunct his ascendant Lord Saturn is in good dignity in Libra, 9th house. So very sophisticated, high level, right? Mastery. Then Moon's in the 1st. Moon ruling the 6th cusp, 6th house. So hardworking and naturally expressive with Moon in the 1st. Jupiter is in Sagittarius, both ruling the MC and the 11th cusp. So said he founded a theater. So that's community, right? Groups, networks. Jupiter in good dignity. Opposite the Sun and Uranus in Gemini. So quite brilliant, quite independent, unique, radical. Mercury's also in Gemini, along with part of Fortune, which is exactly conjunct his Mercury on the IC. So IC is not only early childhood, IC could be something that you learned from your parents, that you inherited from your parents. And then Venus is exactly conjunct Pluto in Taurus. Wow. So very obsessive, kind of penetrating aesthetic quality, deeply powerful aesthetics. Uranus is also the co-ascendant lord and the dispositor of the moon. South node in the 3rd house, very clearly. And then Chiron, Sedna, Neptune in the 2nd. And Jupiter's also ruling the 2nd house. Mars ruling the 3rd in the 7th in Leo. Creative. And very dramatic. Mars and Leo is very dramatic. Big, bold, dramatic. And it's square Venus. Mars square Venus. That can definitely show difficulty with but I mean, Venus is really good dignity. It's square Pluto. I mean, that's very driven, first of all, because Pluto. So the drive, like very hardworking, very focused, very um driven towards he's writing, so he's writing a lot and he's writing to other people. The inspiration is other people. And then the Venus, it's not really ruling a cusp here, but it's in the third house. So again, writing. So third lord and third house. Venus is also ruling the ninth, where his ascendant lord Saturn, north node, is. So writing, but then there's some philosophical, religious sort of something that he's up against, some challenge, something that he has to work through either religiously or philosophically and resolve about that. It could be abuse because Pluto's involved. And it's third house, it's not fourth, but it's fourth whole sign house. Yeah. So, but Venus is in good dignity, so it's probably not that bad. All right. Venus is slow, so Venus is quite powerful. It's not that slow, but it is in domicile. And it is conjunct Pluto. Jupiter's retro, so he's not religious, or at least not orthodox, not conventionally religious. Saturn's retro. So he's not conventionally rule bound or going with authority. Um, well, you just got a lot of good dignity planets. All right. All right. So I'm going to pause it and I'm going to try and do some groupings and come back with some more info. All right. All right. So I organized some I pinned up the all the poet charts just to show some things that are very interesting. All right. So first thing I want to point out is the uh, um, Mercury Venus conjunctions or connection, right? Maya Angelou here in Pisces, eighth house. Elizabeth Barrett Browning, also in Pisces, wider, but this giant Pisces stellium in the sixth house. So sixth house, eighth house. Emerson, not the conjunction, but the sextile, right? Where Mercury's in domicile and sextile Venus. Rudyard Kipling with the conjunction with Mars also. So very passionate as well. Shel Silverstein. A little bit of a sextile there. Not excellent, but Mercury also in domicile. And then Venus conjunct Moon instead. Wordsworth, we got Sun conjunct Venus, and then Mercury conjunct Chiron. So obviously not conjunct or sextile or trine or anything like that, but Mercury in Venus's sign of exaltation. So still a weird, like, kind of conjunction, but Pisces for, creative poetry kind of thing. William Butler Yeats has Mercury and Venus in domicile, pretty not too far from each other, right? They're both in domicile. T.S. Eliot, Uranus, Venus, Mercury on the ascendant in Libra, Venus in domicile. Edgar Allan Poe, we have exalted Venus conjunct Moon, exact, and Sun and Mercury cazimi exactly conjunct in Capricorn. So again, not the conjunction. It's sextile by sign, not by degree, but because both Mercury and Venus are conjunct the luminaries, and Venus is exalted. Sylvia Plath. Venus is in Mercury's sign of Virgo, and that's the only connection, but they're sextile as well. Pablo Neruda, Venus Mercury conjunct in Cancer. Emily Dickinson, Venus and Mercury conjunct the Sun. Oscar Wilde, Venus in domicile, Mercury not in domicile, conjunct South Node, but again, Venus is in domicile, so not quite the same, but still the domicile Venus. Venus conjunct Mars, right? Mercury is a little further up there, but right here we have a Venus-Mars conjunction. Okay, so a little different. Lewis Carroll. And his poetry was a little more, it wasn't romantic. It was wacky, right? It was crazy. Walt Whitman. Venus and Mercury both in Taurus. Right, and these guys are outliers. They don't have the Venus Mercury connection. Ezra Pound, but Ezra Pound is a bit different. Like if you look at his poetry, I'm not a connoisseur or expert on Ezra Pound at all, but what I've read, it's very sparse. Right, it's in a class of its own. It's really its own thing. It's just kind of something very unique and different. Mercury's in Scorpio and Venus is in Sag. They're not really connecting very much. Yeah, it's a very unique chart. Mars and Moon are in Leo. Got strong third house. Pluto. Lord Byron. Venus is conjunct Saturn and Pluto, and this is very intense. It's not bad. It's just really different. And then Mercury's in Capricorn. A lot of Mercury in Capricorn, right, for these poets. But then the Moon, Uranus in the second house, in Cancer. And Venus, Mercury, there's no real connection here. Sextile by sign, but Venus in Capricorn rather than Mercury in Capricorn. Mercury in Scorpio. William Blake. E. Cummings. Venus in domicile, right, with South Node, and then Mercury in Scorpio. So there's a lot going on with Venus and Mercury, obviously. The other really interesting takeaway from all this is the second house, just how predominant the second house is in so many of these charts. You can see that a large majority have something going on with Venus and Mercury, something significant, but then also second house. Mars here is conjunct the second house cusp. Obviously, third house, sixth house is going to be predominant career, MC always at first house, first lord. But second house in particular is very strong with poets. Moon, Uranus, second house. Ezra Pound, not so much. Neptune towards the end, but he's very unadorned. He's very plain, Ezra Pound, his poetry. Walt Whitman, Venus and Mercury. Lewis Carroll, got the Mercury, Neptune. I mean, technically all this is in the second house as well, but it's moving into the third. Oscar Wilde, Venus and Sun in Libra. Emily Dickinson, Venus, Sun, Mercury. Pablo Neruda, Sedna, Jupiter. Sylvia Plath, Sedna, Uranus. Saturn, Neptune, Edgar Allan Poe. Jupiter, Mars, Thomas Stern, T.S. Eliot. Like, it's undeniable, right? There's just so much second house activity. William Butler Yeats, Chiron, Sedna, Neptune. Wordsworth. We've got Jupiter moving in close to it, but Lilith, Pluto. Silverstein, not much going on with Shel Silverstein in the second house. Part of Fortune and Lilith, but part of Fortune might be quite significant. Kipling, Rudyard Kipling, he's got North Node in Libra, second house. Emerson's got Neptune and Scorpio. Not much there, but Elizabeth Barrett Browning has Uranus and Saturn conjuncting the second house cusp from the first, but it's still significant. Maya Angelou has Moon in the second. Alfred Tennyson, nothing really in the second, but Mercury's on the third cusp, but second whole sign house. Thomas Hardy, South Node, and part of Fortune. So those two things are really, besides the obvious, Mercury, Virgo, things like that, Gemini, third house, sixth house, obvious, all the obvious stuff for a writer. But then you get really a lot of second house stuff, and then Mercury, Venus, conjunctions or activation in domicile often, or Capricorn, Scorpio, things like that. There's a lot more I could dive into. Ascendants. I don't think there's any Capricorn ascendants. I'm not sure what other ones we would not see, or the predominance, but like probably Leo, Gemini, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Virgo, Sag, Scorpio, Aquarius, Libra, Scorpio, Aquarius, Pisces, Scorpio, Virgo, Sag, Aries, Cancer, Leo, Gemini, right? So I think that's it. And I like this comparison because you can sort of pull out the really unique things about that differentiates each grouping. Got my coffee here. I need to make some coffee. I was kind of tired reading all those charts. But anyway, that's it for the poets. I hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget the like button, subscribe, share, reach out to me to get a reading. macrogoldmachine@yahoo.com. That's my email. Macroastrology.com. That's still my website. I gotta buy a new domain name, change it to the Mediocre Astrologer. But yeah, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And if you have requests for other, I'm running out of ideas. Of course, there's I can find more, but like if you have something really grouping astrological grouping that you want me to cover, I'll look into it. Maybe I'll do it. Probably will. So, anyway. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Mediocre Astrologer signing off. Meh, he's okay. All right, bye.